the lavish apartment overlooking Central Park where Jackie Kennedy spent her final years. Architect Rosario Candela designed buildings so comfortable and luxurious that wealthy individuals like JFK's widow didn't hesitate to exchange their mansions for a life with neighbors. When Jackie Kennedy Onassis purchased the duplex at 1040 Fifth Avenue in the early 1970s, she undertook renovations that emphasized refinement rather than ostentation. The inside Jackie Kennedy's library was redecorated by designers Harrison Coultrat and Georgina Fairholm. In the hallway at the back was one of the Egyptian statues. One of the anecdotes about Jackie Kennedy that continues to be told in New York has to do with the Temple of Dendor. For a long time, this Egyptian building, more than 2,000 years old, functioned as a bedside table lamp for her. As the Met Guides often explain when visitors reach this part of the museum, it was she who, as First Lady, chose it as a gift from Egypt to the United States for its help in saving the heritage site damaged by the Aswan Dam. Since her Fifth Avenue apartment overlooked the glass-enclosed museum hall where it was installed, she only had to look out of her bedroom window to see it illuminated. But there were, and still are, many other reasons to envy Jackie's home besides these privileged views of ancient Egypt. Over the years, more and more value has been placed on the fact that, like the rest of the dwellings at 1040 Fifth Avenue, it is one of the apartments designed by Rosario Candela, an essential architect in the history of New York who has only recently been given the full credit he deserves. Rosario Candela, 1890 to 1953, was a renowned Sicilian-American architect famous for designing luxurious New York City apartment buildings, defining the city's Upper East and West Side skylines with iconic addresses like 740 Park Avenue, 1040 Fifth Avenue, and 360 Central Park West, often blending neoclassical and Mediterranean styles, emphasizing grand layouts and functional elegance, and significantly influencing high-end residential design during the 1920s and 30s before his career declined with the Depression. He was, to begin, the one responsible for making bird's-eye views of Central Park one of the most prized assets for New York's elite, because the buildings he designed between the 1920s and 1930s were so comfortable and luxurious that Jackie Kennedys didn't hesitate to trade their mansions. Jackie Kennedy Onassis and Aristotle Onassis looking out of their New York apartment. Rosario Candela's architecture coincided with the years in which New York was transitioning from single-family homes to apartment buildings. The elegance with which he planned his homes, the grace with which he managed to draw the eye toward the large windows or a fireplace upon entering a living room, meant that upper-class families, when taking that same step, didn't see the change as a renunciation of their lifestyle. Candela was known for innovative layouts, grand rooms, and efficient floor plans, even incorporating features like penthouse duplexes with two-story windows. The designer mentions, for example, the case of Consuelo Vanderbilt, a member of the well-known dynasty of railroad magnates, who despite growing up in the Petit Chateau at 660 Fifth Avenue, one of the most splendid mansions of Gilded Age New York, and being able to afford to live anywhere, ended up preferring Candela's apartments. After living for a time in one of his duplexes, this wealthy heiress moved to an apartment at 1 Sutton Place South, another of the buildings designed by the architect, where she lived until her death in 1964, shortly after Patricia Kennedy Lawford, JFK's sister, moved in. Jackie Kennedy Onassis restoration, it was her private refuge. Unlike her years as First Lady, the building's cooperative structure and discreet culture allowed her a degree of anonymity and control. She entertained writers, editors, and close friends rather than political figures, reflecting her shift away from public political life. Jackie Kennedy had also experienced the comforts of Rosario Candela's apartments when, a year after her husband's assassination on November 22, 1963, she decided to leave Washington, D.C., and return to the New York of her childhood. Her maternal grandfather, James T. Lee, was the developer of what is considered one of the architect's most notable buildings, 740 Park Avenue, and it was in an apartment on this block that the First Lady spent her early years. Opened in 1930, her apartment at 1040 Fifth Avenue allowed her to once again surround herself with some of the most characteristic elements of Candela's buildings. With a surface area of approximately 5,382 square feet, the apartment occupies the entire 15th floor of the building and, in Jackie's time, featured a staff wing, 5 master bedrooms, each with its own bathroom and ensuite dressing room, a kitchen and wine room, a dining room, 3 fireplaces, a conservatory, a hallway, a foyer, a library, and a living room. The most spectacular space is the terrace overlooking Central Park, located at the foot of one of those ziggurats of penthouses and rooftops so typical of Candela's buildings and which, as David Netto explains to ELPS, was what gave the Manhattan skyline that romantic air of floating castles and cascading apartments without which New York would not have been the same city. In New York, the co-op gave her a mixed sense of peace. Netto recounts in her book how one night, when 2 of her neighbors, the parents of now Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, were hosting a dinner party, the doorman had a memory lapse and, upon hearing that name, the White House sent some of the guests to Jackie's apartment, where she came out to open the door wearing a cardigan and barefoot. But the real nuisance was the paparazzi chasing them, most particularly Ron Galella, who ended up sentenced to 7 years in prison for 12 violations of his restraining order. His is, among others, the famous photograph of Jackie that he managed to take after honking the taxi in which he was following her and getting her to look at the camera. Apparently, painting watercolors of Central Park on the drawing table she had set up in the living room was one of Jackie's solaces in her new apartment. That old family was the Bouviers, Jackie's maiden name, and honoring their French origins, her great-great-grandfather was a cabinetmaker from Pont-Saint-Esprit who fought in the Napoleonic Wars. Much of the furniture in her apartment had that same provenance. Of note, for example, were a pair of Louis XVI armchairs that had belonged to Thomas Jefferson, and which Jackie had already chosen a few years earlier to decorate the White House, a Louis XV table lent to her by one of her confidants, the landscape artist Bunny Mellon, who also gave her the 4-poster bed, and some John Fowler curtains with a design inspired by the Tuileries, in her bedroom. The house's bohemian touch was provided by African-themed prints from design works of Bedford Stuyvesant, a program sponsored by Jackie to stimulate the economy of this Brooklyn neighborhood through fabric design, and by objects made by her children, such as the vase John made from a Coca-Cola bottle and shells collected on the beach. In most rooms there were equestrian portraits. Jackie loved writing, stacks of books. In her later years she worked as an editor, and antiques and souvenirs from her travels, Chinese porcelain, crystal rosaries and Turkish eye beads she brought back from Greek holidays with her second husband, the shipowner Aristotle Onassis, and a few gifts from the Egyptian authorities for the aid to that country. All of this vanished from the apartment after the death of its owner on May 19, 1994, and with the disappearance of Jackie and her belongings, that last link between Candela and the Bouviers was broken. The apartment was sold for $9.5 million to the U.S. businessman David Koch, who, although he ended up tripling that figure when he sold it in 2006, always regretted having wasted 3 years of his life and money redecorating it. "If I knew what Jackie's possessions would fetch at Sotheby's, I would have taken the place furnished," the businessman remarked in a 1998 article in the New York Times about the party with which he inaugurated the apartment. The star guest of the evening was none other than former President George Bush. Indeed, the auction of Jackie's furniture, art, and antiques collection held by Sotheby's 2 years after her death was historic. Not only because of the prices achieved, but because the exhibition of the various lots was one of the city's sensations that year. According to the New York Times, the lucky winners who had won a ticket by purchasing one of the 75,000 copies of the catalog came to Sotheby's New York headquarters from places as far away as Hong Kong and waited in long lines for their turn to enter the auction room, where some of the spaces of Jackie's apartment at 1040 Fifth Avenue were recreated. For once, people were able to penetrate the secrets of Kennedy's widow.